Once upon a time, in a kingdom blanketed by winter snow, a queen sat by her window sewing delicate stitches into white silk. The window frame was carved from deep ebony wood, and through the frosted glass she watched the snowflakes drifting down like feathers from the heavens. As she sewed, she pricked her finger with the needle. 3 drops of crimson blood fell upon the snow on the sill. The red was so striking against the white that she paused and whispered softly, "If only I could have a child with skin as white as this snow, lips as red as this blood, and hair as black as this ebony wood." The wish hung in the air like a promise. That spring, her wish came true. She gave birth to a beautiful baby girl whose skin was pale as snow, whose lips glowed red as roses, and whose hair shimmered black as midnight. They named her Snow White. But joy soon turned to sorrow. The queen's health faded, and within months she passed away, leaving the king and his daughter alone in the silent halls of the castle. A year later, the king remarried. The new queen was breathtaking to look upon, tall, graceful, and proud. But beneath her beauty lay cold vanity and cruel pride. She possessed a magical mirror framed in gold, and every morning she stood before it and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror always replied, "You, my queen, are the fairest of all." At these words she smiled with satisfaction, for the queen could not bear to be second to anyone in beauty. Her reflection was her treasure, her obsession, and her curse. Years passed, and Snow White grew into a child of rare grace. Her laughter filled the halls, her kindness softened even the sternest servants, and her beauty, simple, radiant, unpretending, began to outshine the queen herself. By the time she was 7, the court whispered of the young princess whose fairness surpassed all others. One morning, when the queen asked her familiar question, the mirror's voice replied with words that froze her blood. "You are fair, O queen, it's true, but Snow White is fairer than you." The queen's face twisted with rage. Her heart, once merely proud, turned black with envy. From that moment on, she could not look at the child without loathing. The sight of Snow White's purity, her innocence, her effortless beauty, it tormented her more deeply than any wound. One stormy morning, unable to endure it any longer, the queen summoned her royal huntsman. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with malice. "Take the child into the forest. Kill her. Bring me her heart as proof that she is gone." The huntsman bowed low, but inside he trembled. He had seen Snow White's kindness, heard her laughter. She was innocent. Still, he could not disobey. He led her deep into the forest, where shadows grew thick and the air turned cold. Birds stopped singing as if the trees themselves were listening. Snow White skipped beside him, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Is something wrong, dear huntsman?" she asked softly. He could not answer. When they reached a lonely clearing, he drew his knife. Snow White's eyes widened in terror. Tears welled up. "Please, kind huntsman," she pleaded, "don't hurt me. Let me go, and I will never come back to the castle again." The huntsman's heart broke. He threw the knife aside. "Run, child. Run far into the forest and never return. May God protect you." To fool the queen, he killed a wild boar and took its heart instead. Snow White, terrified, fled into the shadows. The forest swallowed her whole. The trees grew tall and twisted, their branches clawing at the sky. Strange eyes glowed from the darkness. Every rustle of leaves made her jump. She stumbled over roots, crying out as brambles tore her dress. "Oh, where am I? What will I do?" she sobbed. Owls hooted mournfully. The wind whispered her name. She ran until her legs gave out, collapsing at the foot of an old oak tree. There she lay, trembling, until the first rays of dawn broke through the canopy. Exhausted and frightened, she wandered until she came upon a small clearing. In its center stood a tiny cottage with smoke curling from its chimney. "Perhaps someone lives there who will take pity on me," she whispered and knocked. There was no answer. She pushed the door open. Inside, everything was small and perfect. 7 tiny chairs, 7 little plates, 7 spoons and cups. On the table lay bread and stew that smelled heavenly. Snow White, hungry from her journey, tasted a little from each plate, sipped a drop from each cup, and felt warmth return to her limbs. Then she noticed 7 neatly made beds upstairs. She tried each one in turn. One was too hard, another too soft, until she found one that felt just right. She curled up and fell asleep. That night, as the sun set behind the mountains, 7 dwarfs returned home from their work in the mines. They sang as they walked, their pickaxes glinting with gemstones. But when they entered, they saw the disorder at once. "Who's been sitting in my chair?" cried one. "Who's been eating from my plate?" said another. "Who's been sleeping in my bed?" Then they saw the girl. Her golden white face lay upon their pillow like moonlight. "She's beautiful," murmured one. "Let's not wake her," said another. "She looks so tired." So they let her sleep. They whispered among themselves through the night, taking turns watching over her. In the morning, Snow White awoke and gasped. 7 small faces peered up at her, curious and kind. "Who are you?" she asked timidly. "We are the 7 dwarfs," said the eldest, "miners of the mountains." "And who are you, fair child?" Snow White told them everything: the cruel stepmother, the huntsman's mercy, her flight through the dark woods. The dwarfs listened with growing sympathy. "You may stay here with us," said another gently. "If you keep the house clean, cook and sew, you'll be safe. In return, we will protect you." Snow White smiled with gratitude. She had found a new home. Days passed happily. She swept, sang, and cooked delicious meals, filling the cottage with laughter. Each morning, the dwarfs went to work, warning her, "Beware the queen. Never open the door to strangers." Snow White promised. But far away, the queen's jealousy had begun to stir again. The first trick, the laces. Back in her castle, the queen once more stood before her mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" The mirror replied, "You are fair, O queen, it's true, but Snow White beyond the hills with 7 dwarfs is fairer still." The queen's eyes darkened with rage. "So, she lives!" she hissed. Disguising herself as a peddler woman, she set off with a basket of bright silk laces. When she reached the cottage, she called sweetly, "Laces for sale, beautiful laces." Snow White looked out the window. The old woman seemed harmless. Forgetting her promise, she opened the door. "Such pretty ribbons," said Snow White. "Let me lace your bodice, my dear," cooed the woman. She drew the laces tight, tighter, until Snow White could not breathe and fell fainting to the floor. The queen smiled wickedly. "Now I am the fairest once more." When the dwarfs came home, they found Snow White lifeless. They loosened the laces and she gasped for air. "It was your stepmother," they warned. "Promise never to let anyone in again." Snow White nodded tearfully, but the queen's rest was short. Again she stood before her mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" "You are fair, O queen, it's true, but Snow White beyond the hills with 7 dwarfs is fairer still." "Then she shall die again," snarled the queen. She disguised herself as another peddler and made a poisoned comb of shining gold. When she reached the cottage, she called, "Fine combs for your lovely hair." Snow White hesitated. "I must not open the door to strangers." "Then just look, dear child," said the woman. "See how it sparkles in the sun." Snow White admired it. When the woman offered to place it in her hair through the window, she agreed. The moment the comb touched her head, the poison worked. She collapsed instantly. The queen laughed. "Now she is gone forever." That evening, when the dwarfs returned, they found her once again pale and still. They discovered the comb, pulled it from her hair, and she revived. "Please, dear Snow White," they begged, "never let anyone near you." She promised once more. The queen's fury knew no limits. Again, she turned to her mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" The mirror replied, "You, my queen, are fair, it's true, but Snow White beyond the hills with 7 dwarfs is fairer still." Mad with rage, the queen brewed a potion that could kill with a single bite. She dipped one half of a red apple into the poison and left the other half untouched. Then she disguised herself as a humble farmer's wife and made the long journey again. When she arrived, she called cheerfully, "Lovely apples, juicy and sweet." Snow White peered through the window. "I cannot let anyone in." "Then take this one," said the woman. "See? I'll cut it in half. You eat the red side, I'll eat the white. You'll see it's harmless." Snow White watched as the woman ate her half. Trusting her, she took a bite of the red side. The poison burned through her throat. She fell without a sound. "Now," said the queen triumphantly, "I am the fairest of them all." When the dwarfs came home, they found her lying still and cold. They tried everything, water, words, prayers, but nothing could wake her. They wept for 3 days. At last, they laid her in a glass coffin so that they could still see her face, and placed it high on the mountain among the flowers. One dwarf always kept watch. The forest animals came often, birds, deer, rabbits, to mourn the girl who had been kind to them all. Back in her castle, the queen stood proudly before her mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror finally replied, "You, my queen, are the fairest of all." At last she smiled. Many months passed. One day a young prince from a distant land rode through the forest. He saw the coffin glinting in the sunlight and stopped. Inside lay the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. He read the words engraved in gold, "Snow White, daughter of a king." His heart filled with sorrow and wonder. He begged the dwarfs, "Please let me take her to my castle. I will honor her memory always." The dwarfs, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, agreed. As his servants carried the coffin, they stumbled on a tree root. The jolt dislodged the piece of poisoned apple from Snow White's throat. She gasped and opened her eyes. "Where am I?" she whispered. The prince fell to his knees, trembling with joy. "You are safe now," he said. "Come with me, dear one, and be my queen." Snow White smiled through tears. Her life had begun anew. News of the wedding spread far and wide. Even the queen heard of the bride so fair that none could match her beauty. Smiling smugly, she turned to her mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" The mirror replied, "You, my queen, are fair, it's true, but the new queen is fairer than you." Her face drained of color. She demanded to see this new queen herself and rode to the wedding in a gown of black and gold. When she entered the hall, she saw Snow White standing beside her prince, radiant with joy. Recognition struck her like lightning. The guests gasped as the prince spoke. "Let justice be done for her cruelty." They brought out a pair of iron shoes glowing red-hot from the fire. The queen was forced to wear them and dance until her strength gave way. Her pride and envy perished with her. Peace returned to the kingdom. Snow White and her prince ruled with gentleness and wisdom. The 7 dwarfs often visited the castle, always welcomed with feasts and laughter. Snow White never forgot their kindness, nor the lessons she had learned. That beauty without kindness is hollow, and that envy destroys the heart that carries it. Her story was told for generations, not only of danger and magic, but of courage, forgiveness, and the quiet power of goodness. And so, in that kingdom of snow and sunlight, Snow White and her prince lived long and happily ever after,